Good morning, and thank you for joining us and for being here today on Boston's first ever Deployables Day. We actually think, and have tested this with our federal partners, this may be the nation's first Flood Deployables Day in terms of a public-private effort to demonstrate flood deployables all at once as both a training and public awareness exercise to help better protect the citizens of Boston. Today marks a critical step in Boston's journey to ensure we are prepared for both the immediate and long-term challenges of climate change, particularly the rising threat of sea level rise and storm surge. Deployables Day is more than a training exercise and a demonstration of solutions available today to protect against flooding. It's a key opportunity to educate the public about the flood risks that Boston faces going forward. As a coastal city, we know the reality. Sea levels are rising, and with that comes more severe and frequent storm surge and flooding. We know that Boston is particularly vulnerable. We're a city that 1/6 of our land mass is built on filled tidelands, is man-made tidelands. And in fact, the natural shoreline of Boston is just across the street in front of Faneuil Hall in this area. So when we talk about flooding for Boston, it's not just a coastal problem, but it's where the floodwaters go, after they overtop our coasts. Today's event brings together agencies from the city, state, and federal government, and you'll hear from some shortly, to ensure that we are aligned in our approach to near-term flood protection during those citywide emergencies, and also so we can build a more coastal resilient future going forward. As the City of Boston, we're focusing on balancing both short-term and long-term solutions to climate resilience. In the short term, it is barriers like you see behind us here today and demonstrated throughout the city, and we invite folks to visit. In the long term, we're building infrastructure to close those flood paths for 2030 and beyond along our shorelines. And we want to do that in a way that transforms our coastline with innovative solutions, from elevated roadways to vegetated berms to parks and open space that both serve a public and inviting purpose for our residents and visitors and protecting the shoreline and the inland flood paths at the same time. It's no coincidence that Deployables Day falls on during Emergency Preparedness Month. This is a time that we want to remind all Bostonians of what they can do to be better prepared to protect their families, their homes, their businesses, and their communities. It is a coincidence that this falls the morning after a major storm event in Florida. And some of the solutions that you actually see today are deployed in real time right now. There's a deployable fence protecting the Tampa General Hospital as we speak. And this serves as just another clarion call, these major storm events, of the necessity for all of us to be as prepared as possible for major climate hazards. Whether it's a hurricane, a nor'easter, or storm surge, climate change and more extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more dangerous in Boston and throughout the country. And events like today demonstrate how Boston is trying to take proactive steps to protect our residents and businesses from these growing risks. We're providing tools and resources throughout the city, both information and access to innovation and solutions, so that folks know the immediate actions they can take in the event of a storm. Deployables Day is part of a larger strategy in the city to build a more resilient future. In addition to temporary flood barriers, we're pursuing long-term coastal preparedness in the neighborhoods most at risk for flooding in Boston, including downtown Boston, Charlestown, East Boston, South Boston, and Dorchester. I want to acknowledge the tremendous leadership of Mayor Wu in this capacity of getting Boston ready. We have been very fortunate for many years to not have a major storm directly hit Boston, but we need to take advantage of those near misses to make sure we are prepared when one hits. And we can't just roll the dice when it comes to coastal resilience. It's important for us to know that we all have a role to play in this of getting prepared both for the near term and the long term. So with that, I would like to invite Mayor Wu up to say a few words. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much to Chief Sweat, our incredible Chief of Climate in the city, Chief Climate Officer in the city, and someone who has hit the ground running and made sure that we're thinking from all angles about what we need to do to be prepared, healthy, prosperous, resilient as a community at large. And I hope what you'll see here today is that we're not just demonstrating the physical infrastructure, the type of barriers that could be stood up in a moment of need or right before to help mitigate and adapt our communities, but we're also demonstrating the type of social infrastructure. So the work that is coordinated and aligned among all of our city departments, our community partners who are here, all levels of government. This is going to take all of us working together on a very coordinated timeline to prepare both for the long run, but also the short term and immediate impacts that we know at some point we are going to have to face very seriously. So I want to thank, you'll hear from a number of our leaders, whether it's Chief Jordan from Emergency Management or our partners, Administrator Cash or Ehrlich from FEMA and the EPA, our City Councilor, Gigi Coletta Zapata, who's been a strong champion for waterfront resilience and represents so many of the districts and neighborhoods that are impacted here. I also want to recognize our resilience, what was in your title, Chris? Director of the Office of Climate Resilience, Chris Osgood. Chris has worn so many hats, and this is the culmination of really making sure we are capping off getting things done. We're also joined by Yasha Franklin Hodge from our Streets Cabinet, Chief of our Streets Cabinet, Eamon Shelton from Property Management and thinking about all the facilities that the city owns, Candace and team from the Equity Cabinet, and so many others who are here because we all each play our individual role. I think I saw Sarah McCammond somewhere also from the 4 Point Neighborhood Association and many of our community partners who are living the realities of what's happening, and how we are growing as a city is dependent on that. Boston is blessed to have 47 miles of coastline that has shaped our entire history, from our very founding nearly 400 years ago to major events and economic prospects and how we connect with the rest of the world. And today, it is about how we enjoy our access to the water, but also how we are going to shape our future. And these 47 miles of coastline will have a direct impact on the safety, well-being, health, and economic prospects of our community for a long time moving forward, but especially in this critical period as we are adapting and seeing the intensifying impacts of climate change. Just last week, Long Wharf was flooded under sunny skies. Another reminder that many times a year now, even without high winds that are hitting at high tide, we are seeing sea level rise and feeling the impacts of water taking back some of the landfill and the human-made land that the chief referenced. We're dealing with that in many long-term ways, thinking about green infrastructure and how to absorb or provide the barriers with new parks, berms, and other ways that we are building this into the city's plans and default actions. We're working with community members on how to design the right infrastructure and thinking about stormwater management from that way, so we can siphon as much of that water out of the sewer system and directly into the ground with more permeable pavement and more green space everywhere. And we're also working through water and sewer to make sure that our infrastructure that was designed a long time ago for storms that looked much different will be able to adapt and match what we're faced with today. But in the short term, we want to make sure that we are prepared. That means having the protections for the physical spaces that are critical infrastructure for our residents, as well as having the means of communication, outreach, and knowledge that is already embedded in our communities to be able to take action collectively when the need arises. So I want to thank everyone so much for their role in making sure Boston is not just going to be the greenest city in America, but also the most prepared. We know these are issues of fundamental safety for our families, and to be a city that's a home for everyone, it means tackling them right now with everyone in our community. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to pass it on to Councilor Coletta Zapata.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I am so grateful to be here. I didn't expect to speak, so I apologize that this is out on an ad hoc basis, but I feel so incredibly proud to be standing here with this incredibly assembled Climate Avenger team here. The city of Boston is in good hands with this leadership, and I just want to thank the mayor and everybody up here for your visionary leadership to make this Boston and potentially the nation's first Deployables Day. The perspective that I bring is a district city councilor that represents all coastal communities. I believe now I have the most coastal frontage in the city of Boston when it comes to a district city councilor. And so I know the urgency. I see the urgency every day. And I understand what it means to have a city, or to potentially have a city where, you know, the short and long-term solutions, if they aren't enacted, what could potentially happen in terms of displacement, right? And so it is so important that we are here not only to demonstrate climate preparedness, but to help educate the public. It was so great to be on East Boston's Mary Ellen Welsh Greenway today with this team here, demonstrating what would happen when there was a hurricane, if there were to be a hurricane, because it's a matter of when, not if, right? And I was very lucky to come across a resident who asked what was happening. And she was on her morning walk, right? And she was kind of taken aback when she saw a huge wall in front of her. But when I started to explain to her what was going on and what the city was doing, she was so incredibly grateful to understand that the city was being proactive, especially seeing what's going on in Florida today. So I am so incredibly grateful. I want to say thank you again to everybody that is up here. Thank you for your work. And please know, for the public, you are in good hands, and we are preparing today for tomorrow's challenges. Thank you so much.
Morning. For those of you who don't know, my name is Adrian Jordan, Chief of Emergency Preparedness. And I just wanted to give a little perspective on the office's work with the new shift toward building a more resilient city. So not only are we in the process of going through trying to figure out how we get some resiliency hubs so we can make the city a more resilient place for our customers. But I also wanted to remind everybody in the process that resiliency is a community network. So we need to build stronger, resilient communities so we can build out from the ground up to build a more resilient city. So therefore, I wanted to thank the partners, the environment, Sweat, his team, the mayor, her dedication to building a more resilient city, and to let the public know that we are in the process of figuring out the ways, the steps to get you to be a more resilient community, and from the community base, then we build up to being a more resilient city. So I wanted to thank you. And seeing my PIO here, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, sign up for boston.gov/emergencies or go to resi.gov to get more emergency information and to find out where your zones are, especially with Sweat, Commissioner Sweat talking about the hurricane. Everybody needs to understand your zone. Please know your zone. Find out what zone you were in. Be aware of your circumstances. And I wanted to thank you.
I'd like to invite Region 1 EPA Administrator David Cash up.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Chief Sweat, and thank you so much, Mayor, for your incredible leadership. I spent the early part of this week down in Climate Week in New York City, and I know this city is a leader nationally and is a leader globally on preparing for climate change, both on reducing the causes of climate change in terms of reducing our emissions and preparing exactly for the kind of events that today is all about. And it's interesting, Chief Sweat, you said it's a coincidence that this hurricane, this horrible hurricane is happening in Florida, but the probability of it happening is higher and higher and higher. It's not a question of whether Boston will be hit by that kind of hurricane, it's when. And so this kind of preparation is phenomenal. I want to say from the Biden-Harris administration that is investing more in addressing climate change than ever has happened before, both on the mitigation and the adaptation side. We stand ready to be shoulder at shoulder with you in investing in the kinds of things that we're talking about today and being with you as a hurricane approaches, to have our teams working shoulder to shoulder, not just to protect all of the historically important parts of this city, not only to protect the economy of this city, but of course to protect those communities that are most vulnerable, that are already overburdened by the issues of environmental injustices, by the issues of pollution and sea level rise and flooding. So it's such a pleasure to be here today and so inspiring to be a region that has this kind of leadership within the region. So thank you so much.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to introduce another great federal partner is FEMA, and Lori Ehrlich, the FEMA Region 1 Administrator.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you all for coming to what, as far as I am aware, is the only event of its kind nationwide. let it not go unnoticed that your wonderful mayor, Mayor Wu, is leading the nation in this type of event and also is incredibly proactive in dealing with climate change. As she said, 47 miles of coastline is an awful lot of responsibility. We are all here today to highlight something that is being done, something that can be used in the eventuality of a flooding event. As climate change bears down on us, we are finding, as David Cash said, it's more a question of when, not if. So it is to all our credit that we are standing together as apparent climate Avengers. I am happy to be part of the Climate Avenger team to bring this to the public and let everybody know what we can do. Being prepared is something that we can do as a government, as a nation. At FEMA, we work on response, recovery, mitigation, and we are it is resilience. It is the year of resilience at FEMA. We are attempting to build a resilient nation, and part of that is shoring up our coastlines. But also, the inland flooding is also an issue, so it's something that is on our mind too. So, I just want to again say thank you to all of my partners and fellow Avengers here, and I'm proud to join you, and I look forward to the walking tour. And thank you again, Mayor Wu, for your leadership. Thank you.
One Avenger, as I was looking more into the crowd, that I neglected to mention, who is a key part of getting us here and what we're doing, also is our Environment Commissioner, Oliver Sellers Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. So a big shout out to Chris Osgood and the Office of Climate Resilience, Adrian Jordan and OEM, Public Facilities for pulling this off. We have 12 demonstrations, public and private, spread out throughout the city, and it couldn't be done without their partnership. So I'd invite folks who want to join us. Chris Osgood and I will be leading a walking tour. We have vendor demonstrations both on the top of City Hall Plaza and across the street in Faneuil Hall. And again, we'll walk from Faneuil Hall down to the Aquarium T-Stop, which is a great example of partnership with the MBTA on protecting a critical asset. Once we cross the street, you're at the beginning of Boston's natural shoreline. The rest of the way out is filled tidelands and really shows why flooding can infiltrate and impact such a large portion of Boston. And we'll see what some of the solutions that building owners, both public and private sector, have in place today. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully folks can join us for the tour.